By the late 1980s, Japanese game designers were becoming infatuated with creating role-playing games. Western titles such as Ultima, Wizardry, and Dungeons & Dragons were an unexpected hit in the East, and with home consoles gaining in popularity, RPGs were quickly hitting the shelves. Enix's Dragon Quest was among the first to pave the way for Japanese RPGs and was soon followed by Falcom's Ys series and Squaresoft's Final Fantasy. SEGA too wanted in on the action, and in 1987 released Phantasy Star for the Sega Master System. SEGA pegged Kotaro Hayashida, creator of the Alex Kidd series, to design the product with Yuji Naka to be lead programmer. Naka impressed Sega's higher-ups with his home console ports of the arcade hits Outrun and Space Harrier, and Phantasy Star would be his first original project. You may know him more for creating a character named Sonic the Hedgehog, though. He's, somewhat more popular. The development team was unique in that there were many more women attached to the project than was typical. Raiko Kodama was in charge of most of the artwork, while Miki Morimito playtested and configured enemy statistics. The story was also penned by Kayako Aoki, based on a draft of an original story she had written years prior. Phantasy Star, despite its acclaim and initial success, is a franchise that is often forgotten and less celebrated than its counterparts. The first 3 games released in quick succession in 87, 89, and 90. The 4th title debuted in 93, but the next game wouldn't be until the year 2000 with Phantasy Star Online. The online series has mostly dominated the franchise since then, with several expansions, spin-offs, and games on the PS2, PSP, Vita, and DS, utilizing the online mechanics. The original title took full advantage of the Master System hardware, becoming one of the most impressive titles on the system. The Master System already had twice as much memory and a higher CPU than the Nintendo Entertainment System, where Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy made their mark, and Phantasy Star pushed the system to its limit. It even included a battery for saving the game, something that was not common at the time. Despite this, Phantasy Star did not reach the sales of its competition. This is largely attributed to the Master System's smaller install base, and the game becoming much more expensive than the competition due to the battery and high production value. Now I should note that for this review, I am playing the SEGA Ages re-release of this classic title available on the Nintendo Switch. Older games, especially early RPGs, can be grueling for new players to complete, and being so out of date can make the adventure tedious for gamers that prefer the conveniences of modern gaming. SEGA Ages attempts to address the best of both worlds. This title keeps intact the original art style, story, even the typos and questionable English translation, and adds many modern conveniences. For one, the character's HP and MP are always displayed on screen. Secondly, a map is readily available when exploring dungeons, preventing one from getting completely lost. Encounter rates have also been drastically decreased. To counter this, some enemies have been made slightly stronger, and experience points and rewards have been increased accordingly. On top of this, the original game is included completely untouched, for those that want to go the traditional route. As for the display, the player has almost complete control, with being able to put the map on either side of the screen, have the gameplay be full screen or centered, and there are filters that add in scan lines or a CRT TV feel, should you wish. For the majority of my playthrough, I went with an old school TV display, which looked great, especially in handheld mode. I admit though, this doesn't look the best as a YouTube video, so I apologize for that. While Phantasy Star was a pioneer of the RPG genre in terms of gameplay and presentation, it was also a gaming trailblazer in general for including one of the first female protagonists. Alice Landale is our heroine, a woman enlisted in the rebellion against the tyrant King Lassic. After witnessing her brother Nero tragically killed in combat, she takes up his sword in a vow of vengeance, and assembles a party to topple the evil warlord. The warrior Odin and his talking cat-like alien pal Meow first join Alice, and later the wizard Noah swears to aid her. The foursome set out to acquire the most powerful items in the solar system, spread across 3 planets, which will help them end Lassic's reign. The game was among the first to have characters with pre-registered names, personalities, and abilities, while the creativity was removed from the player, not allowing them to choose a class or name for their character. The plot felt much more like an involved story, like reading a book. This would serve to be immensely influential, inspiring countless other games to follow suit. The Phantasy Star games, unlike Final Fantasy and other RPGs, are all set in the same universe. Players will frequent the 3 major planets of the Algol system: the forest world of Palma, the desert planet of Matavia, and the icy wasteland of Dazorus. Graphically, Phantasy Star is quite remarkable for a game released in '87. Backgrounds during battle and conversations have impressive detail, especially in the distant mountains and surrounding trees. Enemies are also strikingly designed, appearing in almost high resolution to enemies from other titles at the time. The animations, though, are what's most spectacular. Each monster, when they attack, performs a movement to signify that attack, whereas the competition simply had the creatures move to the side or flash in battle. There are even cutscenes that help tell the story, although few and far between. It's exciting to see your characters as large, animated figures compared to small sprites. It also helps draw the player in to the cinematic nature of our tale. Combat has a simple structure, but there is some strategy involved. Players can choose to either attack, use a spell or item, flee, or talk to the enemy. Attack will simply hit the enemy with the equipped weapon, although there are some weapons that have extra attributes, such as guns that hit all foes for a set amount. Magic is fairly elementary, with fire, wind, and thunder spells that increase in intensity, a series of healing magic, and defensive abilities that deflect physical or magical attacks hurled at the player. There are some spells that are essential to use outside of battle too, such as Trap, that, curiously by the name, disarms traps that may prevent progress, or Open, which will unlock magically sealed doors. The Talk action is interesting in concept but rarely serves a purpose. The player can attempt to talk the enemy into fleeing, ending battle instantly, but only foes that you can understand are susceptible to this tactic. Even so, it's not guaranteed to work. Due to the fast nature of how battles progress, I recommend just fighting your villains and skipping talk altogether. One confusing thing for newcomers is that only one enemy of each type will be displayed on the screen at once, regardless of how many you are fighting. Suppose you're up against 5 Marmon creatures. You will only be shown one, with the HP values of the others listed to the side. The player also is unable to choose which of the 5 to specifically target, which can also be a shame, so a little luck may be involved in finding success in some battles. Still, the simplistic nature of it all keeps combat moving fast and fluid, and rarely ever gets boring, even for a 30-year-old game. Alice is a strong female protagonist, and remains a cornerstone in creating female leads to this very day. She is a warrior, wielding both magic and a sword in her quest for vengeance. Many female characters, even in the present, are relegated to a healing or less offensive role in RPGs, but not true here. She also assumes the role of leader of the rebellion, and her companions look up to her and are willing to aid her due to their admiration of the young woman. She is also more of a relatable character, in that she's not the chosen one, or an all-powerful being, or something like that. No, Alice is an ordinary woman, fueled by her passion and powered by her skill to save the galaxy. The only thing about Alice I don't quite understand is her hair. On the box art, she has distinctly blonde hair, while her in-game sprite has solid black hair. Her character portrait and her likeness in cutscenes, however, shows her with brown hair. Maybe she has some futuristic hair dye that she uses in between battles or whatever. I don't quite get it. Phantasy Star blends many elements from other stories and genres, creating a world that doesn't quite feel like anything else. It is firmly placed in the sci-fi genre, without a doubt, with its planetary travel, robotic soldiers, and laser guns. It also falls in the fantasy and mythical genre. Creatures like centaurs, skeletons, and dragons frequently pose as obstacles in our hero's journey and must be slain. There are even mentions of the weapons of Perseus and the creature Medusa, which feels odd in the space epic. What's perhaps even more out of place are modern conventions. To heal, for example, the player can buy burgers and cola to replenish their health. It kind of reminds me of Earthbound or Star Tropics in this regard, but even stranger, considering that this is set in a galaxy far, far away, and not on planet Earth. At least you're not drinking alien cow milk. Battles are quick and decisive. This makes random encounters much less annoying, but it can be hard to follow the flow of battle. Also, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the SEGA Ages version features too few encounters sometimes. I can often travel between cities or explore the entire floor of a dungeon without meeting one enemy, and that's a bit too low. Phantasy Star features numerous dungeons for you to explore, some of which are optional and feature a powerful item hidden deep inside. Exploring these dungeons takes place in a first-person view, much like classic dungeon crawlers on computers. The downside of this is that it's very easy to get lost in these labyrinths, and they are all designed almost the exact same way, except for a different color for the floors or walls. The SEGA Ages version, as I've already mentioned, features a helpful map in the corner of the screen that updates in real time while you explore, making dungeon diving much easier and more fun. The music in Phantasy Star is composed by SEGA veteran Takahiko Uwabo. The music is adventurous and quite catchy. It is repetitive, although this is more due to the limitations of the console and not a reflection of Uwabo's skill. In fact, he should be praised for making such memorable and enjoyable music despite looping after only a few seconds. The original Phantasy Star can feel dated, but it's still immensely fun and is a must-play for RPG fans. I dare say this first entry is, in my humble opinion, better than all three of the first Final Fantasy games, and that's really saying something. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend grabbing the SEGA Ages version on the Nintendo Switch, as the upgrades it provides makes your journey to the stars much more palpable. Nevertheless, Phantasy Star is a ride well worth taking.